Hello, hello, hello. Today we are going to learn about TXAMSEM. TXAMSEM. This guy. Right here. This deity in the Tsimshian lore. They are native of this land right here. This little, that right there, that teal green area of below Alaska, I guess. And I think they extend further outwards into Canada. I'm not sure if they technically come into America, or if that is part of America, that part of Alaska. I don't know. But that is their land, and this is what they look like right here. They're these people right here. And that might be a Tsimshian totem right behind them. Look at it. It's like a raven, and that's what TXAMSEM of the Tsimshian people is. TXAMSEM of the Tsimshian people. Say that 10 times fast. TXAMSEM of the Tsimshian people. TXAMSEM of the Tsimshian people. He's right there. Behind him, I'm guessing that's him. That totem. And that's the people, the natives below. And I really like their attire. I mean, those wraps, they look like very comfy blankets. Not gonna lie. They look very comfortable. And it's gotta keep them warm because it's cold up there near Canada. That area is very cold. But yes, this is what my interpretation of what he looks like. We'll get into more images later. But that is an interpretation, kind of a humanoid raven. And he is a trickster god of the Tsimshian people. TXAMSEM is a trickster god of the Tsimshian people. The giant raven of Tsimshian. And he seems to be, from what I've read a little bit so far, he sees to be a giant that puts on a raven skin. Kind of fascinating. Not a ordinary deity by any stretch of the imagination. And this is what the famous trickster raven is called by the Tsimshians. They tell this story about him. Once upon a time, the only light in this world was hoarded by a mean old chief who was not disposed to share it. TXAMSEM, the raven, bored of fluttering around in the dark, decided this would not do. So he turned himself into a cedar leaf and sneakily fluttered into the chief's dwelling. So the raven giant wearing a raven skin, I guess, turned himself into a leaf. That way he could, and the chief, I read about this already, is the chief of heaven. So much like tribal societies that have chiefs, they attribute that to the higher power. They also apply chiefdom to their gods, which is quite fascinating because some natives don't really refer to their gods as chiefs. But this culture, Tsimshian people do, which is kind of fascinating. Bored of floating around in the dark, decided this would not do. So he turned himself into a cedar leaf and fluttered into the chief's dwelling. The chief's daughter was sipping a drink, and TXAMSEM fluttered into the cup as she raised it to her lips. She swallowed him down becoming pregnant and gave birth, which caused no end of confusion. The baby had raven black hair. Maybe by no end of confusion, that could be a creation story for confusion. Why people get confused. We'll see. The baby had raven black hair, dark glowing eyes, and was very temperamental. An annoying baby. Whenever it was bored, it shrieked. The chief, trying to be a doting grandpa, said, "Give the baby what it wants." So they gave the baby a bag of shining stars. A bag of shining stars for the little raven baby. It played merrily with these until one day, in gurgling excitement, it threw them up in the smoke hole in the ceiling, and they scattered into the sky. Oh dear, the baby is bored again. It's bawling. It wants another bag. Oh, this is a totem. This is one of the Tsimshian people's totems. I don't think it depicts Tsimshian, the raven god, but that could be like the giants, maybe. That's what I'm thinking. Maybe it's like the giants. I don't know. It's interesting, though. It's very interesting. So maybe it's like the giants they worship. Very fascinating. There's good old TXAMSEM. Maybe that's his raven baby. His little raven baby. Or it could be the giant with the skin suit on. Why is he flying? We'll never know. The baby what it wants, so they gave the baby a bag of shining stars. It played merrily with these until one day, in gurgling excitement, it threw them through the smoke hole in the ceiling, and they scattered up into the sky. The baby is bored again. It's bawling. It wants another bag. Another bag of stars. It's driving the household crazy. It must be pacified. So they give it a bag containing the moon, and soon the baby is happy again. Bouncing the moon all over the place. You'll never guess what happens next. Whoosh! Up through the smoke hole goes the moon. So that's the creation myth for the TXAMSEM people of how the moon was created. Deprived of another toy, the baby becomes really disruptive. The chief is tearing his hair out. The whole household is muttering. Find something, anything to keep the baby quiet. The baby rejects all homemade playthings and points to the last bag. Uh-oh. They give it to the baby, but with dire warnings, don't untie it because it contains light, and that leaks like nobody's business. Now you think you know what's going to happen, but you don't. What happened is that the baby turned back into TXAMSEM, cried "Ka very much," and flew through the smoke hole carrying the bag in his back. Bag in his beak he had stolen from the sun. Ka very much. I like that. I might use that instead of saying thank you very much from now on. That's kind of fun little saying. Ka very much. Ka very much. Please like and subscribe. Ka very much. That is fun. Ka very much. Ka very much. Please like and subscribe. And in the description, other my social medias I have. If you want to see any strange things I post, give those a follow. But back to TXAMSEM. And he flew through the smoke hole carrying the bag in his beak. He'd stolen the sun. TXAMSEM spread light throughout the world, and so the chief's daylight saving scheme had come to an end. So that's also the creation myth of how light was brought to Earth. This guy, he stole the bag of light, the bag of stars, scattered them, threw the moon up in the sky, the bag of light, and brought light to the earth. Carrying the bag in his beak, he'd stolen the sun. TXAMSEM spread the light throughout the world, and so the chief's daylight saving scheme had come to an end. He was very disgruntled. His recorded comments contains very strong language in the TXAMSEM dialect. So, this trickster god is responsible for the sun. Right back there, all the sun back there. All that sun back there. He stole a bag of light from the chief of heaven. The baby did. The giant wearing the skin. So, I'll do a quick summary of what happened. So, a giant of earth wearing the skin of a raven went to the chief of heaven's house, disguised as a cedar leaf, and put himself into a teacup of the daughter of the chief of heavens. She drank it. She gives birth to a raven baby. She gives birth to a raven baby, and this raven baby is TXAMSEM. And TXAMSEM doesn't like very much that it's always nighttime. Doesn't have a lot of fun on Earth since it's always nighttime. So what does TXAMSEM do? Goes to the chief of heaven and complains. Wah, wah. The little baby raven. Wah, wah. And it complains that it's always nighttime and it sucks down on Earth. And he throws such a fuss that the chief of heaven gives TXAMSEM the bag of stars. And then TXAMSEM scatters the bag of stars in the sky in a fit of rage, or pouting baby poutiness, throws the bag of stars. And those bag of stars, well, that's the stars. And then he takes the bag, the chief, since he threw the stars, gives him another bag, the bag of the moon. I'm guessing tells him not to mess around with that. But he does, and he throws the moon up in the sky. Now you have the moon. That's how the moon came to be. TXAMSEM threw it up in the sky, playing around. And then the chief of heaven was pretty angry at this. I'm giving you these toys, and you're playing with them. Why is he getting mad that TXAMSEM's playing with the toys that he gave him? Who knows, maybe he's just an angry old codger of a man. And TXAMSEM thinks up a tricky little scheme. This little bird right here thinks up a tricky little scheme. And what's that scheme? That's some more of the shimmy people. That scheme is to steal the sun. So TXAMSEM sneaks into the chief of heaven's home, and he steals the bag. Steals the bag of the sun. And this makes the chief angry. Chief is angry because his whole scheme of keeping it permanently dark on Earth is gone. And now you have 12 hours of daylight and 12 hours of night, thanks to this little bird right here, TXAMSEM. That looks that image, that makes me think of the giant in the skin. And if you're wondering what I mean when we're going to go to this other legend. This is a more traditional telling of it. The other was a more Western perspective on the tale, but now we'll read the actual myth as written by people who study it, I guess, a bit more than the other source. So let's read this version of it. At one time, there was always darkness, never daylight. Giant put on his raven skin and left the heavens, flying across the water for a long time. When he was very tired, he dropped a little round stone that his father, the chief, had given him. It fell into the sea and turned into a large rock, where he lighted to rest. Gotta read that again. It's kind of hard to understand. When he was very tired, he dropped a little round stone. At one time, there was always darkness, never daylight. Giant put on his raven skin. So Giant put on his raven skin, left the heavens, flying across the water for a long time. When he was very tired, he dropped a little round stone that his father, the chief, had given him. It fell into the sea and turned into a large rock, where he lighted to rest. So he dropped a pebble in the ocean to rest, okay? Then he flew east again until he reached the mainland at the mouth of Skeena River. Skeena River. I want to look up where that is. Skeena River. Whoop. Skeena River. Skeena River, British Columbia, Canada. Map. Nope, because I don't want you to show where I'm at. Skeena River. So I guess that's images of the Skeena River, and that's where the giant dropped the pebble and took a rest. The giant in the raven skin. Map. Come in. Map. Whoop. Skeena River map. So this is the Skeena River in a map. Where's an easy image to understand right there? Nope, I don't think any of these images work that way. There we go. So there's kind of Canada. There's Vancouver Island right there. So that's the Skeena. And inside of that province, I guess, is the Skeena River. This river right here. And that's the Skeena River. There you go. So yeah, that's the Skeena province. You already saw where that is. It's kind of the left side of Canada, and that's the river right there. So yeah, back to my images. So, and there he scattered salmon, roa, and trout. So that's how salmon, roa, and trout got into that Skeena River. And there he scattered salmon, roa, trout, roa. The roa saying, "Let every river and creek have all kinds of fish." So that is the creation myth of how the fish got in the Canadian rivers there. TXAMSEM scattered the fish in the Skeena River and kind of ordered them to spread throughout the land. And there's some more of the Tsimshian people. And they're very... I think that that actually might not be Tsimshian because they're not wearing the blankets. They tend to wear the blankets, but... Well, I don't know. You tell me in the comments below. Tell me. Is that the Tsimshian people? I don't know. And he had packed with fruits. He strewed them... Okay. This one's kind of interesting, and it's kind of gross. It's kind of a bit gross. But listen to this. So, he had packed... Okay, opening a dried sea lion bladder. You hear that? A dried sea lion bladder he had packed with fruits. He strewed them all over the land and said, "Let every mountain, hill, valley, and plain be filled with these." So that's the creation myth of how Canada, Tsimshian people believe that fruit came to be. Was this raven right here? Raven right there. He took a bag of a sea lion's bladder. The bladder of a sea lion that he filled with fruit, and then he threw it all across the land. And that's how the creation myth of how fruit, and maybe some veggies, I guess, came to be in the Skeena, is it Skeena province? Yeah, Skeena province of Canada came to be. And how we have fruit on the planet. It was just fruit that was stored in this raven's sea lion bladder bag. Yep. Okay, moving on. When the sky in this world of darkness was clear, a little light came from the stars. But when it was cloudy, there was only black night. The people were distressed by this. So this is, the king of heaven, or the chief of heaven keeps it nighttime, 24/7. That's another one of the totems right there. That's another one of the totems that they have of the Tsimshian people. Kind of interesting looking. That at the top, that could be Raven, or that could be Raven in the middle. Looks more like a raven than the other totem that kind of were just human faces. But, yep, the chief of heaven keeps it permanently dark on earth. So, when the world of darkness was clear, a little light came from the stars. But when it was cloudy, there was only black night. The people were distressed by this. So actually, it wasn't permanently dark, but it was dark. Anytime it was cloudy, it was pitch black. Not like today, where it's kind of gray when it's cloudy. It wasn't gray. It was just pitch black. All because the chief of heaven was greedy with the sunlight he gave to the earth. And Giant was too when he realized how hard it would be to get food in the dark. There was a light where he had come from, and he made up his mind to bring it down. Putting on his raven skin, trickster god, remember? Puts on that raven skin, and placed it near the hole. Then he traveled until he came to a spring near the house of the chief of heaven. There he sat down and waited. Soon the chief's daughter appeared with a small bucket to fetch water. When Giant saw her coming to the spring, he transformed himself into a cedar leaf. There you go, that's a cedar leaf. And he's going to put himself in that bucket, and she's going to drink him. Without noticing the leaf, she dipped it up with some water and swallowed it. After a short time, she was with child, and soon she gave birth to a boy. The chief and his wife were delighted and took care. Okay, so maybe TXAMSEM is just the giant with the raven skin on, and the child is totally different. The chief and his wife were delighted and took care of the baby as he grew strong and began to creep about. Then, however, he began to cry, "Hama, hama, 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 hama. Hama, 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 hama." The baby cries, "Hama, hama, hama, hama," all the time. Nothing they could do would soothe him, until finally the chief called his wise men together and asked them why the baby was crying. One of the men listened to the cries and understood them. He told the chief he is crying for the Ma. This was the box in which the daylight was kept, and which hung in one corner of the chief's house. It was the giant. It was what the giant had remembered when he descended to our world. The chief immediately ordered it taken down and placed it near the fire. Suddenly the boy stopped crying and began to roll the Ma about inside the house. So the Ma it's light. So he's rolling light. Maybe that's how it makes the ball that makes the sun. There you go. That's how the sun came to be. So the baby rolls a ball of light. And that ball of light becomes the sun. So imagine a little baby raven, I guess, maybe, rolling a ball of... I'm still not sure if the baby was a raven, and Tsimshian is the giant in the raven skin, or the baby is a raven too. I don't know. But the baby rolls light into a ball, and then he's gonna throw that ball in the sky. It was what the giant had remembered when he descended to our world. The chief immediately ordered it taken down, placed by the fire, and the boy rolled the Ma. And the Ma is the sun, I guess. He played with it for 4 days until the chief became so used to the child's games that he did not notice them. Then the boy, who was of course a giant... Oh! Revelation. The boy is giant. The boy is Tsimshian. So the cedar leaf got eaten by the mom. The mom gives birth. Mom gives birth. And it's Tsimshian, who was the cedar leaf, now turned into a boy. So this is why he's the trickster god. Kind of like Loki. You know, Loki plays little tricks like this in Norse mythology. But in Tsimshian, they got Tsimshian, who's kind of the Loki. And he shapeshifts a lot like Loki did in Norse mythology. Very interesting. So, Tsimshian is the boy, is the cedar leaf, and is the giant wearing the raven skin. Very strange, very interesting. So yeah, maybe Tsimshian, you know, this is another one of their totems. Maybe he is like the giant at the top, and he's kind of all of them, because he is a trickster god. Grabbed the Ma, put it on his shoulders, so he put the sun on his shoulders, I think, and ran out of the house. Seeing him, someone said, "Giant is running away with the Ma," and all the hosts of heaven pursued him. So the chief of heaven, who is the god in their mythology, sorta, Tsimshian's one of the deities, but chief of heaven, I assume, is kind of the main one. He hoarded the light. He hoarded the Ma. And Tsimshian turned himself into a cedar leaf, tricking the god, sneaking in, turning into a baby that the chief of heaven's daughter gave birth to. Stole the Ma, ran out of the house with the Ma, and the hosts of heaven, kind of like the tribal members, just kind of like other members of a tribe, chased him. I assume they shot arrows at him through spears. And all the hosts of heaven pursued him, but he reached the hole in the sky, put on the raven skin, and flew down carrying the Ma. And his pursuers went back home, so they gave up the chase. This time, Giant started at the mouth of the Naz River and traveled up it in the dark. After a while, he heard the noise of some people who were catching olachen in bag nets from their canoes. I want to see, what is olachen? Let's see. Oh, goddamn. Whoopsie. Whoopsie. I just sent my phone flying. Hola. And I am back. I dropped my phone, and it made all the recording stop. How annoying. I don't think TXAMSEM wants me to tell his story. But we're gonna do it anyway. And I looked up what the Olachen is. It's basically just means fishes in the sea down there. And salmon roa. If you don't know what salmon roa is, that is salmon roa. All of that right there. Those orange things, what could they be? What could they be? Well, those are salmon eggs. That's where the salmons are born out of, is salmon roa. And Olachen also means the salmon themselves. Also some other fish. I think it's the shimmy shimmy term for fish. That's their term for fish. And that's the creation myth. The Olachen. So TXAMSEM is gonna throw that bag of Olachen in all the seas. And throw these eggs. He's gonna grab those eggs and he's gonna throw them in all the seas out the bag. And that's gonna be why Canada has fish. So that is the creation myth, the shimmy creation myth of how fish came to be. Alright, so back to the myth. In the bag of nets from their canoes, holding the maw, giants sat on the shore and asked them to throw him one of their fish. They refused, calling him a liar, for though he was wearing his raven skin, they knew it was a giant. Throw me one, or I'll break the maw, Giant said. Still they scolded and taunted him. Giant repeated his request 4 times. And then broke the maw. Suddenly, there was daylight. Pow! Look at that. There's daylight now. It's because the maw was broke. So, he broke the maw. And we're going to imagine this stick right here. So, the maw, what is it? It is the... So, going back into the story, he takes the sun, or not the sun yet, he takes the light, he steals the light from the chief of heaven. He steals the bag of light, he rolls it on the ground, forming the sun. Then, known as the maw, I like to think he puts it on this staff right here. That little staff right there. And then he walks around with it. Now, in this part of the story, he's walking around, he sees these frogmen that were playing. We didn't even get to that yet, but the fishermen are actually frogmen. I like to think they're like humanoid frogs. If you want to see what one of those might look like, go check out my best Egyptian deities, my top Egyptian deities video, and there's a picture of a humanoid frog. I think it's Heket, the Egyptian god. Go check that video out and see a humanoid frog. But yes, these frogmen were fishing, and he wanted the bag, and he got so angry, the bag of fish, he broke the staff, and that's why we have sunlight. That's why we have the sun. Because he broke that little ball right here. That little ball right there. He broke that. And I guess it went up into the sky. Kind of like how he created the moon when he was the baby that got born from the chief's daughter. He just kind of threw the moon ball up into the sky. This one he broke the staff, and let's just imagine it flew up into the sky. So yeah, throw me one or I'll break the maw, Giant said. Still they scolded and taunted him. giant repeated his request 4 times, and then he broke the maw. Suddenly, there was daylight. The north wind began to blow hard, and all the fishermen, who were actually frogs, were driven down river until they arrived at a large mountainous island. Here the frogs tried to climb up, but they were frozen by the icy winds and turned into stones that stuck to the rock. They are there to this day, and to this day all the world has daylight. Now, what might these frog people look like? Well, I looked it up, and this is kind of the Tsimshian frog people bowls they make. Oh my goodness. How annoying. How annoying. So right here. So these are the frog stones. Right there. So those are the frog bowls. That's kind of what the Tsimshian, the frog people, I guess, would look like. That's their frog bowls. As you can see, these things right here, these are what the fishermen probably looked like. Like this one right here, that's a good one. Look at that guy. Look at that guy, that's probably a Tsimshian fisherman. The frogman fisherman. Very interesting. Frog humanoids they have in their lore. Look at that thing. Strange indeed. Strange indeed. And I just love learning about strange pantheons of deities around the world. But yeah, this is Tsimshian frog people. Ooh, look at that one. That one's kind of weird. What is that? That looks like kind of like a demon or something. But anyway. So yes, he broke the staff. That's how he got sunlight. And there's frog people in the Tsimshian land in Canada, who were actually frogs, were driven down the river until they arrived at large. Yep. And that is that more traditional telling. I assume it came more from a Tsimshian person. The other one was more of a Western interpretation of the Tsimshian beliefs. There's another one of their cool totems. And then there's the maw on the stick, let's imagine. Now we're just gonna learn a bit more from Wiki and see what we can learn about the Tsimshian people and the mythology. So Tsimshian mythology is the mythology of Tsimshian, an Aboriginal people of Canada, Native Americans of the United States as well. Tsimshian myth is known from an orally past tales, and that's what I mean. I don't know if I brought it up or it was in the previous recording, that orally past tales, that's why they differ so much from the two, because they're just told so differently. As every generation, as children, they tell their children, and it just turns into nothing like what the original was originally intended. And that goes for all pantheons and stuff, but usually some pantheons, they're written, and that written word cannot be misinterpreted unless it is rewrote. Whereas the Tsimshian, it's pretty much just orally passed. There is no written account of Tsimshian here. Look at that totem. That's a cool totem. I don't want to put that totem in my yard. It's a cool one. Probably protects your home from spirits. But yeah, orally past tales is a story concerning animal spirits and human guise. And that's what this one is. He's a giant in a raven skin. he's also a raven, I think, that's just born from the daughter of the Chief of Heaven. Then he also turns himself into a cedar leaf. He has a lot of shape-shifting abilities, so he's like an energy spirit of some sort. And what else did he? He did something else, I forgot. I don't know, did something with the frogman. There was a fourth one, but he's an energy spirit too. And the Raven Spirit, no, he also has a different name. Weegyat. Look at that, gyat. Weegyat. W-E-G-E-Y-E-T. Weegyat. Weegyat. Gyat. And, yeah, so he has two names. But, we going with the Tsimshian of the Tsimshian people. Tsimshian of the Tsimshian people. A Mask, in contrast, is an adventure history that purports to entertain rather than to explain. So this story is meant to entertain rather than explain. So it's an entertainment story too, for the Tsimshian people, rather than an explanation of how the sun came to be. Maybe. That's kind of interesting. Maybe it's like a movie for the Tsimshian people. An imagination movie, old story. The Raven Spirit, known as Weegyat Tsimshian, is said to have a brother named Logobola, who is responsible for the lack of fresh and clear water, as well as the existence of fog, into which Tsimshian became lost. The raven known as Tsimshian, or the Giant, is a central figure in the Tsimshian mythology. Part of Raven Tales mythology connecting the indigenous people. That's a cool one. That's them pulling up another one of their totems. That's some modern Tsimshian people over there near Alaska or something, pulling up one of the totems. The Raven is viewed as the creator of the universe and an intermediary between its physical and spiritual incarnation. So maybe in kind of like a, can't remember the name of the Egyptian god. That kind of looks like I think he looks like an ox or something, and he's like, he controls the boat between the afterlives. This guy kind of like that. An intermediary between you and the spiritual world. Fascinating. Or maybe he's not an intermediary at all. Maybe he just doesn't care about him and he just does his own thing. But he is a being who can go between energy and physical. Viewed as the creator of the universe, there's physical and spiritual incarnations. Tsimshian creation myth presupposes a dark and still universe populated by a variety of animal spirits. An animal chief pampers his son, causing him to fall sick and die, and his intestines are burned. It's very, this part of the lore is kind of brutal. His part was kind of, he turns into a cedar leaf and gets born. And then there was also the thing about the sea lion, the sea lion bladder that he kept fruits in, and that's how he spread fruits to the land. The Tsimshian, kind of a brutal story, this. An animal chief pampers his son, causing him to fall sick and die, and his intestines are burned. They burn his intestines. The next day, a new youth appears in the bed, healthy, visible in the darkness, bright as fire. The boy is adopted by the chief initially. This boy does not eat, but a slave spirit tricks him into eating scabs. You ever eat a scab? So, this is kind of weird. Like a demon, a slave spirit, tricks him into eating scabs. It's pretty gross. Yeah. Intestines are burned, tricks him to eating scabs. This triggers an enormous appetite in the boy. Kind of reminds me of the Wendigo. Wendigo? because they eat human flesh and it makes them more hungry, and they crave more human flesh. It's a bit like the Wendigo, because he's eating his scabs and it makes him more hungry for more flesh. Who begins to eat so much that the chief and the villagers send him away with a raven blanket. The boy leaves and becomes Raven. So, once again, orally past tales. They vary drastically, and this third one is way more different than the first two. The first two were very similar. I'm gonna go with the second one. Probably the most accurate one. The first one is a more coherent telling of it, as told by a more Western perspective. But this third one, it's definitely very different. Triggers an enormous appetite. He begins to eat so much that the chief and villagers send him away with a raven blanket. The boy leaves and becomes Raven. So, I'm assuming the boy is the giant, wears the raven skin. As Raven arrives in the mainland, more shimmy people. Beautiful. I love those. Look at those blankets, man. I want to wear one of those. Those are so nice looking, and they keep you so warm, I'm sure. It's Raven alive. He is insatiably hungry, causing great disruptions to those he meets. At various points of the myth, he serves as a trickster. For example, after creating a slave from rotted wood, he disguises himself as a king. There's King Raven right there. And arrives in a village. The villagers tell the slave to invite Raven for dinner, but the slaves say Raven is not hungry and takes the food for himself. Raven builds a bridge from cabbage. So he builds a bridge from cabbage, and as the slaves cross, they fall to their deaths. And Raven eats the slaves' bellies. So pretty sick. So he eats scabs. It makes him insatiably hungry for human flesh. And he creates this kind of trap with a cabbage bridge. Cabbage, I'm assuming it's cabbage, because cabbage you can break easy. And as they walk across the cabbage bridge, the bridge made of cabbages, they fall to their death. And then he swoops down, and he eats their entrails. Maybe this is a warning to not walk across rickety bridges in Shimshimi lore. Don't walk across rickety bridges, or SemSem might swoop down and eat your entrails. Pretty gross, but pretty. That's a good warning, I guess. Maybe don't walk across rickety old bridges, or SemSem might eat your entrails. As Raven begins to develop a sense of generosity, he hosts a potluck. Now this is very interesting. Maybe this is like an origin of the term potluck. I don't know when the term potluck was made, but I love potlucks. You know, everybody brings food, everybody shares and brings a little piece of food to make a big feast. And it's wonderful. I love potlucks. And SemSem might have been the original potluck creator, in which he shares food with many guests. As he speaks, he wishes they would all turn to stone, and they do, giving form to a previously immaterial world. So maybe it's all energy before, and then he hosted this potluck and tricked them into turning them into stones, and that's how we got kind of this physical form of the world, maybe. Probably not interpreting that right, but it's kind of fascinating because it sounds like it was only energy, and then he invited other energy beings to the potluck. Like, hey, come on, I'm gonna feed you some scabs and entrails. And they all come along, and then he turns them into physical form. Fascinating. Fascinating learning about these other cultures. And then that's pretty much the Tsimshian lore. The third one, a lot different than the other two. Some more. Look at the hat. I didn't even notice that before. Look at that hat. Look at that hat right there. That hat is awesome. Maybe that's Tsimshian, because it kind of looks like a bird beak. I would totally wear one of those hats. And then the lovely blankets, of course, the traditional Tsimshian attire. Just wonderful. And I love how they're flayed at the bottom like that. They're all flayed. It looks beautiful. And that is the end of Tsimshian lore. So in summary, he was a giant. Let me see if I can find. He was a giant that put on a skin suit. Okay. This little skin suit right here. Let's imagine that. To disguise himself as a raven. And trick people, I guess. And he turned himself into a cedar leaf, a little tiny leaf, to steal that maw right there, that little ball that was light. And how he did that was after sneaking into the Chief of Heaven's home, he turned into the leaf, the daughter ate him, gave birth to him, and he, I assume, became more like an actual raven, a little tiny raven like that. And he whined and complained like a baby so much that the Heaven Chief got tired of his whining and gave him a bag of stars. He threw the stars up in the sky. So he had to get him something else. He gave him the moon in a bag, and he threw the moon up in the sky, and that's why we have the moon. And then, to finally suffice this baby's tantrums, he finally just gave him a bag of light. Or no, he didn't give him the bag of light. He, Tsimshian, hatched a plan to steal the bag of light. Because at this point, the heaven chief was getting real tired of this baby. He was like, you want to slap that baby. Because he was getting so tired of the constant tantrums. And he probably wasn't going to give him the bag of light because of all these tantrums. So, Tsimshian hatched a plan. And in the dead of night, he snuck into the home of the Chief of Heaven and stole the light. And rolled this light into a ball, and then I'd like to think he put it on the staff and walked the earth, kind of just using it commandingly. I command you to do this for me. But he eventually came across these frog people that were fishing, and he wanted their bag of fish and roe eggs. And they wouldn't give it to him. The frog people wouldn't give it to him, so he got so mad, he snapped the staff, and the sun went up into the sky. And that's why we got the sun. And then other stuff he was doing, it seemed, was eating his own scabs when he was a giant. And that caused him to get a hunger for entrails. And he liked to lure humans. Maybe that's when he used the staff. He liked luring humans with the staff across his cabbage bridge. And the cabbage bridge was just a trap to make them fall to their death. And then he swooped down and ate their entrails. fascinating little story. And created potlucks. And I love me a potluck. You might not want to go to this guy's potluck, because he's just going to serve you entrails and scabs. But you could come to my potluck. I invite you to my potluck. And anyway, yeah. That is the tale of Tsimshian of the Tsimshian people. Tsimshian of the Tsimshian people. Comment below if there's a deity you might want me to do in the future that you think's a strange one. And what you thought of this video. And please like and subscribe if you liked the video. And consider checking out any of my social media links posted below. And have a good day. And don't eat entrails. And don't eat scabs. And don't walk across cabbage bridges. And don't steal like this guy. But have a good one. Bye-bye.